Good evening, Shortcuts. Stephen here. This is list one. The price list will go out on Wednesday, February 7th at 9 p.m. Sydney time. If you want to receive the list, email me at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Details in the channel notes. This is the exotica soul and blues and funk list. I don't think I've had any of the records on this list before. I think they may be all making debut appearances. Oh, actually, no, there's one, maybe two exceptions. I had to start here. Some exotica. Marilyn Monroe Sings. This is a compilation, a mono compilation on the Orange RCA label from 1973. From what I can tell, it's a Japan-only release. And I wanted to give you a little tour of this record. So it's a wonderful, glossy, typically high-quality Japanese sleeve. So that's the front. And I'm not sure what movie this is, but it gives you a sense as well. Whilst Discogs says this is 73, it would not surprise me if this is earlier. Part of the reason I think it might be is because it's unusual for the Japanese to be in the sleeve. Typically, that's extricated into an insert. But in the 60s, that practice wasn't so common. So I have a funny feeling this might be 60s, not 70s. On the inside, you have, I think this is the famous subway scene from Some Like It Hot, but you also have the songs. Now, the songs are all in mono, and so I played it earlier today. The opening track, River of No Return, I had no idea that she had such a sultry voice. But then on side two, tracks like Heatwave and Lazy are really exotica. You've got, parping big bands, lots of drama. You can kind of hear that they're kind of soundtrack driven. My favorite on the album, though, is easily She Acts Like a Woman Should, which is the song by Jim Scott that closes side one. There are some Irving Berlin standards in here too that she really does sound good having a crack at. So that's interesting. Now, what's also part of this package is this little booklet. Now, it's in the same kind of pink hue as the inside, and you've got some kind of the more famous kind of snapshots of Marilyn, and there's in Japanese it looks like a biography. Also has her full discography, but as the booklet continues, you get more and more photos from some of her most famous movies, and then you get this rather wonderful centerfold. Look at that. How cool is that? And then, I think a little bit more controversially, on the back of the insert, you have her shot from Playboy, issue 1, which is, I think, also pretty magnificent. So this is a really interesting artifact. So I thought I'd kick off tonight's list with that. Now, whilst Marilyn Monroe was a pin-up and an extraordinarily sensuous woman, there are other bands in the 70s that use women and their imagery in a rather more controversial way. One of them is the Ohio Players, who are infamous for spectacularly tasteless sleeves. Now, the record that I'm about to show you is from 1976. I think in many ways it's their best. They were at the top of their game. And there's a couple of songs from this record that crossed over from the kind of black funk charts into the mainstream. But it also is their most extraordinarily pervy sleeve. And so, forward wind now if for 20 seconds if you want to skip. But I do find it interesting. The one thing I'll say, it is a white label Japanese promo. It sounds amazing. It's got this little kind of insert too, which I think is part of the promo. So it looks like it's a series of little pieces of information for journalists and radio stations, because it doesn't appear on Discogs or on any of the official lists. But the album is the Ohio Players' Contradiction, and for reasons known unto themselves, it shows a young lady feeding an apple to a horse in a way that's, I guess kind of interesting. And on the inside, you get a little bit more detail on how that happens. Such a weird band. Look at the front, at the back. Yeah, anyway, great record. Okay, now I've got a couple of blues records that are on here primarily because they're two of my favorite blues records, and I have always had them on the Shibuya list, in that if I ever come across them, I just put them in my box because I love them. So you all know how much I love Freddie King. This is the Texas Cannonball. This is his second record on Shelter Records, the first being Getting Ready, which is wonderful. The third is Burglar, which is even harder to find than Texas Cannonball. And that is where Freddie King goes full funk. But here, his band are incredible. I think I remember there's the Memphis Horns and some others. You can hear the Stax influence, but his guitar is incredible, especially on the ballads. There's a couple of ballads here that are really, really great. And I think part of that is because, if I remember correctly, the producer was Leon Russell. Now, Texas Cannonball was a nickname for Freddie King because he was 6'7", massive individual, and a massive, massive talent, and an utterly fantastic record. And you know what? This next blues record is just as good. This is one of my all-time favorite sleeves, and I've been reading a biography of Junior Wells and that nascent kind of blues scene from the 50s into the 60s. I love his harmonica playing and his linkage to Buddy Guy and everything. But in that book, they have a quote where he says that this is his personal favorite record, and it is Junior Wells On Tap on the Delmark label, which is one of my all-time favorite labels. I'm loath to take all the packaging off because it's obviously not been opened very often. It's in amazing condition. When you take it all off, this makes you thirsty. In fact, maybe I'll have a little drink from my own when I'm describing it. It's an amazing record. Blues from the 70s, early 70s, that incorporates the influence of Stax Records just floats my boat. It just sounds great. You've got these guys who have been playing 3 gigs a night for 15 years, whose bands are tight as a drum, and who know how to deliver, and finding a canon or a kind of a laneway that allows them to smash out amazing records. Both Texas Cannonball and On Tap are wonderful. If you love the blues and you don't have those 2 records, give them a listen and maybe pick one of them up. All right, well, we've had 2 blues records. Now I've got 2 records from the wonderful Wilson Pickett. 1967's The Sound of Wilson Pickett, and 1971's Don't Knock My Love. A lot of people think The Sound of Wilson Pickett is his best record of the 60s. There is some competition, and that competition is Hey Jude. But I think The Sound of Wilson Pickett is indeed the best record of his 60s, and maybe his best record, full stop. It is rare to have it with the OB. It is like a greatest hits package. You listen to all the tracks and you think, well, they must have all been massive hits, but it's not the case. There are a few that were massive hits, but there is no dip in quality. It is banger after banger. He just sounds amazing. I love it. And also, this one, look at that dapper chap, Wilson Pickett. And on here, part of why I like this record is the choice of rock songs that he covers. So he had this thing of using his incredible voice, but he loved singing rock songs. So what you get on this one, opening track, Fire and Water by Free. You've got Hot Love by, I don't know if that was T-Rex's version anyway. It's different. But he absolutely loved belting out a good rock song. And so this record, he just gives it. It's only 4 years after The Sound of Wilson Pickett, and it is some ways more sophisticated. I think you can also hear his own taste coming through a little bit more. He's not really chasing the hits. He's kind of having fun. It's loosey-goosey compared to The Sound of Wilson Pickett. So there you go. Yeah, two Wilson Pickett records. Oh, man, there's some great ones still to come. How about this? The debut album by the Sal Soul Orchestra. Now, you might not recognize the sleeve because the Western view of Sal Soul Orchestra is very different. You've got this almost bland black record with kind of like a train. But I think, I'm just going to double check. Yeah, it's on their own label, the Sal Soul label. So in the West, you kind of got a sleeve that looked a bit like this. But this sleeve, I think, is more appropriate because it gives a sense of the playfulness of the record. This record is, in places, unadulterated disco. But it also is seriously funky in places, and that's not a surprise because the band are primarily MFSB, who were the house band for Philadelphia International Records, who were a very successful soul label, competed with Motown and Stax in the 70s. Had a very different style, much more string, sometimes a little bit more syrupy. But the Sal Soul Orchestra is fun with a capital fun. And so what do we got next? I was going to change the order, but I'm just going to have to go. We have Do That Thing by Willie Bobo. So where we've got here, funk with a disco lean. Here, you've got funk with a Latin soul lean. Great drummer. Really like this label, the Tico label. Gajera is probably the only song on here that you might think of as a hit. But in the same way that the Sal Soul Orchestra delivers a fun injection, so does Willie Bobo. And I think Willie Bobo is becoming he's not loved by the critics, and there isn't a critical stampede behind Willie Bobo. But when I put on a Willie Bobo record, I feel good. I really enjoy them. Give it a listen. It's well worth your time. All right, we've got 4 to go. Gosh. This could well be my favorite record in this list, and I love this list. This is Cosmic Truth by The Undisputed Truth. I'm actually going to take this one, so forgive the crinkle, because I'm going to take this out of the sleeve as well. Undisputed Truth. Their first 2 records are unashamedly soul. It's on the original Tamla Motown label. This third record, they widened out, and it is, there are parts of this record where they sound like a full-on psych rock band. There are parts where they sound like a fusion jazz band. There are parts when they sound like the best soul band that has ever been. Cosmic Truth kind of lays it out for you. You've got this really kind of funky, spacey theme, and that plays through all the songs, although there are a couple of exceptions, and I'll come to that in a second. But look at that gatefold. Isn't that amazing? White afros with space alien kind of makeup on off-the-shoulder kind of jumpers with wings. I love it. I love the Undisputed Truth. And of course, you know, crucifixes and weirdness. And part of the genius of this band is the producer, Norman Whitfield. He is a legit genius. Every song on this, there is a point on every song on this record where it goes off in a direction you're not expecting. You know, things like even the track list, Down by the River, cover version of Neil Young and Crazy Horses Down by the River. And it is brilliant. And that, in fact, you know what? I'm going to draw this right into this record, the next record, Buddy Miles. A white label promo of Buddy Miles, More Miles to the Gallon. So why? Because Buddy Miles covered Down by the River as well. And this is a white label promo. But this record, oh man, I love it. Love it. Spaced out. The opening track on side 2. There's everything it says in the tin. If you did not, well, I mean, they sound like a Black Hawk wind. and that's a compliment of the highest order. Little Red Riding Hood was the only thing that you might think of as a crossover hit, but I mean, it didn't make a big splash. But it was an absolutely amazing record. I've already told you about More Miles, Buddy Miles. Buddy Miles was the drummer on Hendrix's Band of Gypsies. But he also had a wonderful, soulful baritone voice and could turn himself to all sorts of wizardry. And so this, interestingly, you know, when we think about the Sal Soul Orchestra, this record was nominally Buddy Miles kind of going disco. I don't hear disco anywhere in this record. That is a funk record and nothing else, and it sounds really good. Talking about drummers, what about Lenny White? Now, you know who Lenny White is because there are many of you out there who are fans of Miles Davis, and if you know the album Bitches Brew, then you know Lenny White's playing because he is the drummer on Miles Davis's Bitches Brews, also the drummer on Return to Forever with Chick Corea, and this is his record. Look at this, The Adventures of the Astral Pirates. Now it opens out like this on the sleeve, so you get this kind of almost comic book adventure, but on the inside you get the story of the Astral Pirates. And it is, in my mind, no coincidence that this came out in 1977. And what was the biggest hit of 1977 in pop culture terms, and maybe the biggest pop culture hit of the 20th century? Star Wars. And so I don't think Lenny was particularly original in telling the story of Astral Pirates. But I will say this record is a trip. I think that they were imbibing mushrooms of a special flavor when they were recording this record. I don't know how they get to where they got to without there being some chemical assistance. So with all of that, I'm going to finish with a classic from 1961. I love this record. I love this group. This is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot by the Staple Sisters. Pop staples, Mavis Staples being, I guess, the legends off the back of this group. This record is gospel, and unashamedly amazing it is too. If you don't know Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, please give it a listen. There is an Obi, but I've just slid it out. It is in wonderful condition. Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, good news each day. Don't knock, help me, Jesus. Oh, honestly, it is Roebuck Staple, Mavis Staple, who's described here as youngest daughter with a rich contralto, though you may call it a bass, who many expect to take over Mahalia's mantle when the time comes. They're referring to Mahalia Jackson. You've got Purvis Staple, the only son and tenor, Cleotha Staple, oldest daughter and alto. Mr. Roebuck Staple, of course, being Papa Staple himself, father of the group, musician, manager, and leader. So there you have it. You've got the Staple Sisters, the Undisputed Truth, Lenny White and his Astral Pirates. You've got the Sal Soul Orchestra, Texas Cannonball, Freddie King, and Marilyn Monroe. There you go. That's your disco, funk, gospel, soul, blues list. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like these little videos, please like, subscribe, leave me a comment. I'd very much appreciate it. And if you'd like to be on the list for the price list for this list, Shortcuts Records AUS@gmail.com. Alrighty, I've got a hell of a rock list coming as well. I better get on with it. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks. Bye.